Hundreds of protests have rallied in Mexico and the United States to defend Cuba and reject foreign destabilization. Landslides and monsoon flooding have killed over 100 people in Western India. And a bus accident in Croatia kills 10 people and injured at least 45 others. Hello and welcome to teleSUR. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez in Quito, Ecuador, and this is from the south. On the occasion of the 16th anniversary of the founding of the multimedia platform on teleSUR, the Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro offered an interview in which he thanked the TV station for its work in the construction of a genuinely Latin America and Caribbean identity and for its role in combating the hegemonic control of the Western media.
Who would build from the Latin American identity the necessary information, all the events, and that could serve as to counter the hegemony in terms of the mass media communication, to be an alternative to the mainstream companies in communications. And 16 years later, we can say that we have accomplished a great mission of informing the truth of the world.
President Maduro also ratified that government is open to national dialogue with an agenda of all sectors, including the opposition, to live in a peaceful society so everyone could be united against international restrictions.
Today, I can tell you that we are in a dialogue with all the opposition sectors, including Voluntad Popular and Juan Guaidó, yes, with all the sectors of the opposition. We are dialoguing with groups. With different sectors, and I can tell you that we are ready. We are ready to go to Mexico. The Bolivarian delegations of my legitimate government and also the opposition's delegations are ready. We have already set a very complex agenda, and we have agreed on the basis to launch this dialogue. And in August, early August, we are going to install in Mexico with the Norway's government help and with the participation of the different governments around the world. And this answers your question. I hope to have the participation of the governments of the world, and the United States participations as well, to install a group for dialogue and peace and reconciliation with the opposition so that we can have a national agenda, agenda that will lead them to renounce to violence and to interventions, to violent protests and attempts of assassination, so that we can all call for the lifting of sanctions so that they can give back Venezuela's gold and so that we can take back our companies around the world. So we are ready, and I would say that we are 90% there. And in the forthcoming negotiations that are so far secret with the participation of the government of Norway, we will have a definite agreement.
Hundreds of protesters have rallied in Mexico and the United States to defend Cuba and reject foreign destabilization. Many activists gathered in Washington, D.C. to demand the end of the U.S. blockade on the Caribbean nation. Meanwhile, in Mexico, social organizations have marched in the capital to support the Cuban government and to defend the rights of the Cuban people. Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez urged the United States government to halt a fleet planning to approach Cuba's territorial waters. The Cuban diplomat warned about the U.S. government plans led by political organizations based in Florida, which he described as provocative. In his latest statements, Rodriguez rejected the recent sanctions imposed by Washington against Cuban officials under the excuse of alleged abuses against demonstrators after the disturbances of July 11th.
En absoluta calma, los servicios.
St. Lucia is ready to hold general elections on Monday, July 26th. The voters will elect their new government as well as the members of the Legislative Assembly after having nominated their candidates on July 16th. The CARICOM and international observers have been arrived to the Caribbean island to guarantee the normal development of the electoral process. The 21st Summit of Foreign Ministers of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, CELAC, has been held in Mexico. The CELAC Assembly takes place in commemoration of the birth anniversary of the liberator Simón Bolívar. During the meeting, topics such as integration, economic reactivation amid the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, among other important issues for the region, have been discussed. Additionally, Mexico is taking advantage of the summit to promote the project of the creation of the Latin American and Caribbean Space Agency for technological development in the region. Mexico's Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard met with several foreign ministers during the CELAC meeting. He met with Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez, and both discussed important issues regarding their bilateral relationship and the COVID-19 pandemic. They also assured their commitment to cooperate and strengthen their bilateral relations between both nations. The Mexican Foreign Minister ratifies his country's solidarity with the government of Cuba in the face of recent attacks by the United States. During this summit, the Mexican President Andrés Manuel Lopez Obrador has talked about Cuba to highlight its resistance to the permanent siege from the United States.
Que por su lucha en defensa de la soberanía. I believe that for their struggles in defense of the sovereignty of their country, the people of Cuba deserve an award for their dignity, and that island should be considered as the new Numancia for its example of resistance. And I think that for that very reason it should be declared a World Heritage Site. Por su ejemplo de resistencia.
López Obrador also stressed the need to create a new organization with autonomy from the United States.
No debe descartarse. It should not be ruled out the replacement of the OAS by a truly autonomous organization, not a lackey of anyone, but rather a mediator at the request and acceptance of the parties in conflict in matters of human rights and democracy.
In Brazil, thousands of people have protested once again in Rio de Janeiro and several other cities against President Jair Bolsonaro's handling of the pandemic. Bolsonaro has long received criticism for downplaying the severity of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has claimed over 500,000 lives in Brazil. It is the second highest death toll in the world after the US. Demonstrators demanded Bolsonaro's impeachment and greater access to COVID-19 vaccines.
It is very important that all those who feel offended and oppressed by this government come to the streets, because we need to fight for the return of democracy.
Already have 1 million people dead in Brazil. This has to stop. Our genocide.
Fora genocida! In Haiti, the state funeral of assassinated President Jovenel Moïse was held at his private residence amid heavy security. Foreign diplomats and Haitian politicians attended the funeral as the country continues to suffer protests and instability. The flag-covered coffin of the president was brought onto a central stage lined with white curtains carried by men in military uniforms. A line of Moïse's supporters stood by the entrance, shouting justice for Jovenel. Moïse's widow, who was seriously wounded in the attack that killed her husband, gave a speech as part of the tributes.
On behalf of the entire presidential family, I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here to pay a final tribute to my husband, Jovenel Moïse. These are dark days for the family.
At least 7 of the Colombian mercenaries involved in the killing of Haitian President Jovenel Moïse had received military training in the United States, according to statements by the U.S. Secretary of Defense and an extensive report published by the Washington Post.
Producto de exportación con alta solicitud, an export product in high demand, which is essentially those thousands of Colombian soldiers, officers, etc., who over the last 20 years, specifically after Plan Colombia was implemented and Plan Patriota, which was Uribe's continuation of Plan Colombia, a hyper-militarization of the country, a doubling of the size of the military. You know, we're talking about thousands of soldiers who've been going around the world, to the United Arab Emirates, to Afghanistan, to Iraq. These are highly trained, highly disciplined soldiers.
More news in a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back. Landslides and monsoon flooding have killed over 100 people in western India. A government spokesperson, India Whereware, said 130,000 people were rescued from nearly 900 affected villages across the state of Maharashtra, where many of those rescued were stranded on rooftops and even on top of buses on highways. Authorities have deployed hundreds of rescuers in the affected area to trace missing people and take stranded to safety, and even scores of soldiers are also helping in the rescue efforts. Typhoon Infa has swept into eastern China after flooding chaos. According to meteorological reports, Typhoon Infa made landfall in the city of Zhongshuo at 12:30 local time. The effects of the storm were also felt Sunday in Shanghai, China's largest city, with strong winds and steady rainfall. As a result, transport links have been suspended and people have been told to stay indoors. There has been some flooding and dozens of ships have been evacuated from a busy port south of Shanghai. However, there are no reports of major damages. Belgium has been devastated by flooding for the second time in just over a week. The deadly floods killed 37 people. The southern Belgian town of Dinant was hit by the heaviest floods in decades after a 2-hour thunderstorm turned streets into torrential streams that washed away cars and pavements but did not kill anyone. Still, the violence of this storm surprised many. Last week, more than 210 people died in the floods in Western Europe, with most of the casualties in Belgium and Germany.
We've already had a flood like that. I think it was in 1976 in Belgium, but it was just passing through. It wasn't as strong as this. Now we realize that floods, at least in our area, are more and more frequent and more dangerous. But we really need, and I really ask our Belgian government to send specialists to guide us towards what we should do for the population, because this must never happen again.
Croatian authorities have dragged a bus from the side of the highway that crashed early Sunday, killing 10 people and injuring at least 45 others. The accident happened at around 6 a.m. near the town of Slavnovski Brod on the highway between the capital Zagreb and the Serbian border. Rescuers continue working around the bus while traffic on the highway was halted. The bus had Kosovo license plates and was on a regular road from Germany to Kosovo capital Pristina. Authorities said after an investigation that the driver of the bus had been arrested after he apparently lost control over the vehicle after briefly falling asleep.
There was 67 passengers and 2 crew members on board. Unfortunately, 10 people were killed, 9 passengers and 1 driver. We express our condolences to their families. 44 people have been admitted to General Hospital in Slavnovski Brod. 8 of those 44 have sustained severe injuries. according to my information. 4 of those have undergone surgeries, and others are being monitored. Some have lighter injuries, some more serious. 14 other passengers and 1 driver are inside our police station here, and they are awaiting hotel settlement, which will be provided by the canton of Slavonski Brod.
Meanwhile, Croatian Prime Minister Andrej Plenković has promised state help for the families of the dead and injured Kosovar citizens who were victims of this morning's tragic bus crash in the east side of the country.
We just had a meeting with the Kosovo ambassador and we talked to the Kosovo Prime Minister. We are here to help, and we will cover the costs for the stay here of all who were injured and not injured. They will all be repatriated to Kosovo in stages. Because of the different medical conditions of the injured, we will help by all means.
French protesters opposed to COVID-19 health restrictions have clashed with police in Paris. Incidents started between the police and demonstrators during a rally against COVID-19 vaccination and government measures for certain professions. The French anti-riot police tried to push back the demonstrators with tear gas. This weekend, French lawmakers are due to vote on a bill drafted by the government aimed at setting up a health pass and mandatory vaccination for health workers. And also in Greece, police have used rubber bullets and tear gas against protesters in Athens as demonstrators rejected a government decision ordering the mandatory vaccination of healthcare workers and nursing home staff. In Italy, hundreds of people have rallied in the center of Rome to protest against the introduction of a mandatory COVID-19 Green Pass. Some protesters say they were vaccinated but were against being obligated to have their children vaccinated, and also they will reject new freedom restrictions. The COVID-19 Green Pass is a certificate that contains proof of vaccination or immunity. It will be mandatory from August 6 for indoor dining in restaurants and for access to cultural and sporting venues.
The Green Pass is an unjust obligation. Freedom can be restricted. It is against the Constitution. But there is a decree that imposing the Green Pass. It will be judged by the Constitutional Court that maybe will abolish in the next months. It is anti-constitutional.
Thousands of people have gathered in the annual Budapest Pride March to oppose to the country's referendum on a controversial anti-LGBTQ law. Hungary's right-wing Prime Minister Viktor Orban has said that a national vote will be held to evaluate domestic support for the law, which includes a ban on the depiction or promotion of homosexuality. The march came after a controversial law passed by Hungary's parliament in June prohibited the display of content to minors that depicts homosexuality or gender change. The controversial law also limits teaching about homosexuality and transgender issues in schools.
This week, Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister, has announced a referendum on child protection, and the questions of the referendum are very transphobic and homophobic, so that's why there is a huge outrage in the Hungarian society. Many people are angry and would like to show their support for the LGBTQ community, so that's why we think that this Pride March will be historical, probably the biggest Pride March in Hungary ever. We think that it will be a very peaceful march, even more protected than in general by the police, because there is a huge foreign delegation here, not only ambassador, but there are many foreign journalists and politicians, even member of the European Parliament, so this will be a very, very bad point for Viktor Orban if there was any attack at the Pride.
Meanwhile, in Germany, nearly 35,000 people have peacefully marched for LGBTQ rights in the Christopher Street Day Parade, the equivalent to Pride March. The demonstrators march while remembering what's happening in Hungary and other European countries.
What happens in Hungary, what happens in Poland, what happens in Europe in general also has an impact on Germany, on France, on all the other countries. What started in Poland with the LGBT free zones, what's happening in Hungary now, this reinforces all the hatred towards us. You see it has an impact in France, in the UK, in Spain.
After Corona, I find it really nice that this was possible, although with distance rules and with masks, but somehow to come together again is really nice.
And we have more stories coming up after one last break, so stay tuned. Welcome back. 28 kidnapped Nigerian students have been released after almost 3 weeks. Armed kidnappers released 28 of the 120 students who were abducted at the beginning of July from a high school in the northern town of Damishi. The parents of the kidnapped students had been gathering daily inside the school, crying, praying, and demanding justice. They hope that the others still held hostage will be released in the coming days. The UN Children's Agency estimates that at least 950 students have been abducted by gunmen since December in Nigeria, with more than half of the abductions occurring in the past 2 months.
I don't know how I was very, very happy. Over happy. I don't lose hope. I don't lose hope. That's the reason why to eat. Even today when I entered this place, the people that I used to joke with them, they asked what happened. I just waved my hand for them. Because throughout that last night, I couldn't sleep. I thought maybe my daughter will not come.
What happened today is practically the intervention of God, because we have no power to turn the heart of the people who took these children. And they only announced to us, go to so place, you'll find them. We went and found them. At other times, they said things like that, and we never found them. But this time around, we found them. We are hoping that when they call us again, we will continue to find them.
At least 6 Cameroonian soldiers have been killed in Boko Haram attack in the north of the country. Military and local sources say Boko Haram militants overrun an army base, killing at least 6 soldiers and wounding several others. One of the soldiers said the militants arrived in a convoy of 6 vehicles. After several hours of fighting, the commander of the military base was killed alongside at least 5 of his colleagues. Casualties on the part of the militants remains unknown. Boko Haram has plagued Cameroon's far north region since 2014, killing more than 2,000 people, according to security reports. Dozens of people have gathered in Islamabad to mourn the death of Nur Mukadam, a Pakistani woman who was violently killed earlier this week. The 27-year-old woman who was the daughter of a former senior Pakistani diplomat, was brutally beheaded in the capital city. The horrific nature of Mukadam's death has outraged right groups in Pakistan, who say the country has become increasingly dangerous for women. Prime Minister Imran Khan has blamed a woman for the way they dress, and a senior police officer blamed the victim of a gang rape for being on the road alone at night. Sahir Saraf, the son of a wealthy industrialist, has been arrested and charged with her murder.
I'm so overwhelmed and so touched by this incident that I just can't explain my feelings and sentiments. And I'm sure everyone here will bear me out that this is an unpardonable offense, and we should also put it on the PM's portal and also raise our voice so that this man gets a capital punishment.
Help women make the right choices so that they can, progress in life without having to stigmatize them. These are women and they'll always be like this. No, they won't. You give them the opportunity, you give them a good education, and they will serve Pakistan with their life and their blood.
Japanese media have reported that COVID-19 cases have spiked to 127 among Tokyo 2020 athletes and personnel. The Tokyo 2020 Organizing Committee confirmed 17 additional cases at a press conference, including a foreign athlete who was staying in the Olympic Village. The latest 4 cases are likely to be security staff members at the Olympic venues. The committee has asked the athletes to undergo COVID-19 tests every day. However, the organizers admitted that daily testing failed to cover every athlete due to insufficient testing tools. And we come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find this and many other stories as always in our website at telesurenglish.net. And don't forget to join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.